The functionality of our application is ready. But before jumping into the other side of Xamarin, which is Xamarin Classic, we need to talk about MVVM. MVVM is the pattern natural to XAML applications. And during this section, we're going to be changing our application a little bit, not in functionality, but in the way it is structured. And let's talk about why we should use the MVVM pattern. How is the current structure of our application wrong? Well, it's not that it's wrong, it's just that it's not ideal. By implementing the MVVM pattern, we will be separating our application into three concerns: the model, the view, and the view model, which by the way is exactly what MVVM means: model, view, view model. And by separating the application into these three concerns, it is going to become easier to maintain. It's going to be easier to test, easier to evolve, and we're going to get better code reuse. So even in a Xamarin Forms application where we are reusing almost 100% of the code and the interface between Android and iOS, implementing the MVVM pattern is going to make code reuse even better. And because we are separating the model and the view model from the view, it's going to enable developer and design workflow. And since we're already using XAML, it's just natural to start using MVVM. And for us to be able to use MVVM, one thing that we already know about is going to be key, and that is data binding. We are already a bit familiar with this, and we are going to continue using data binding throughout this section. Now, this is the basic structure of the pattern. We're going to have the view model, and the model. The view model and the view are going to be in constant interactions, sending notifications of changes from the view model to the view, and the view is going to communicate with the view model through data binding. The way the view model and the model communicate is that the model is the one that is going to be sending the notifications to the view model, and the view model is going to send updates to the model. So let's dig a little bit deeper into each of these. Let's start with the model. The model is going to be something that we've already been doing, which is the data model. It's going to be typically classes that we already have. And if you remember, we already divided these classes, this data model, in its own folder inside of our Xamarin Forms PCL project. But the model can also have a business and validation logic. For example, what we did with some of the classes, when we had some properties and we made some validation before assigning values to the variables. And business logic can refer to get information that is coming from a database or the cloud. That, of course, has to do with the class or the model that we're working with. The view, it's pretty easy to guess. It's just the layout, the design of what is going to appear on the screen to the user. It has to have limited code behind. So ideally, it's going to be entirely set with XAML, no business logic. And if you think about it, this makes sense because the MVVM pattern is supposed to make it easy for developers and designers to work together. So the designers could focus just on the view, just on XAML, and not think about the logic behind it. And the view is going to be getting its data from the view model throughout bindings or methods. And we've already been working with both so far. And finally, the view model is going to be the intermediary between view and the model. It's going to hold the view's logic. So some of the logic that we currently have in the code behind for the XAML files, we could move it to the view model. And it is going to be providing the data from the model to the view in the structure that the view needs. So it may make some changes to the model before sending it to the view, so the view can display this information seamlessly. So this was a very brief introduction to MVVM, the pattern that is natural to XAML applications. And now that we've talked about the benefits of the MVVM pattern, in the coming lectures, we're going to be changing how the application is structured and to implement some interfaces into our code that will allow us to work with MVVM.